I was at the morning staff meeting when Tim, the warehouse VP, made the announcement. Eric Benton was the new branch logistics supervisor. My stomach dropped. Eric? The guy I'd trained just 3 months ago? I froze, my mind reeling. Everyone started clapping, and I joined in, but barely. My hands felt stiff. Tim grinned like he'd just solved world hunger. Big thanks to Tasha for getting Eric up to speed, he said, beaming. A footnote in my own career. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Lexi. Did you get it, Mom? I glanced at Eric across the table. He winked, like we shared some inside joke. But the joke was on me. I nodded at Lexi's text, even though I hadn't read it yet. Tim kept talking, praising Eric like he was the next big thing. Meanwhile, I could feel my jaw tightening. Eric was the new guy, and I'd helped him get there. The room cleared out fast after the meeting ended. Tim waved me over, his grin still wide. That same overcooked smile plastered across his face. Hey, Tasha, he said, settling into his chair. Let's have a quick chat. I didn't sit. Standing, I crossed my arms, waiting. He leaned back like he was about to drop some deep wisdom. Eric's got potential, Tim started. The words like they came straight out of a playbook. He represents the future around here. I bit the inside of my cheek. The future? More like the replacement. But don't worry, he continued, ignoring my silence. You're still gonna run the day-to-day. You're the steady hand, Tasha, the one we count on. I nodded slowly, trying to keep the anger out of my voice. Yeah, sure. Look, I know it's a big change, Tim said, leaning forward now, lowering his voice, like we were about to share something important. But Lexi needs stability, right? That hit like a punch to the gut. I stopped myself from saying something sharp. It took everything not to snap at him, but I couldn't let him think he was right. He thought I wouldn't walk away because of my daughter, because I was a single mom who needed the paycheck, who wouldn't rock the boat. My heart tightened in my chest, and I had to force myself to keep eye contact. What's that got to do with anything? Tim shrugged, the casualness of it grating. Just saying, I know you've got priorities. I respect that. You won't make any rash decisions. Stability for Lexi, for you. His voice dropped lower, almost like a whisper, and I could see the wheels turning in his head as he thought he was being a friend. A mentor. Train Eric well, he said with a grin. And your loyalty won't go unnoticed. Later. Later, I repeated, more to myself than him, trying to hold it together. Tim smiled again, that smug smirk that made my skin crawl. I'm just saying, there's a future here for you, Tasha. If you play it right. I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Thanks, Tim. I'll keep that in mind. He didn't get it. Not even close. I didn't need his later. He had no idea I'd already made my mind up. I turned on my heel, letting my steps echo in the empty room. But as I walked away, I knew something inside me was already done. I was still seething from my conversation with Tim when I stayed late that night. The office was quieter now. Only the hum of the fluorescent lights and the clicking of keyboards breaking the silence. I was at my desk, mindlessly running through emails, when I walked past Tim's office. His door was cracked open. I didn't mean to listen, but his voice stopped me cold. Tasha won't push back, Tim was saying. She can't afford to. I froze in place, heart pounding. He was talking to someone from corporate. She's solid, Tim continued. She'll do the work, keep the wheels turning, make Eric look good without even realizing it. My stomach churned. The words hit harder than anything he'd said directly to me. I had spent years doing everything right, solving problems, staying late, fixing things that no one else could. All that effort, all that commitment, reduced to predictable behavior, to being the reliable one, the one who could be counted on to take the hit. I stood there, rooted to the spot. Part of me wanted to barge in, confront him, but I didn't. Instead, I kept still, barely breathing, and listened to the rest of the conversation. Eric's the future, Tim said, almost like a promise. He's got potential. Tasha, she's fine where she is. The silence that followed felt suffocating. Then the door clicked shut. I didn't move. It was like the air had gotten thinner, and I couldn't get enough of it. My chest tightened, and my hands balled into fists. I whispered to myself, barely audible, "They think I'm broken." And just like that, something inside me shifted. It wasn't anger anymore, not really. It was cold, clean. I could feel the change deep in my bones. The frustration melted away, replaced by clarity. I wasn't broken. They thought they had me figured out, that they knew my limits. They thought I'd never step away because of Lexi, because of my situation. They didn't know anything. They didn't know me. I took a breath and walked away from Tim's office. The hallway was dim, quiet, and as I passed the conference room, I glanced at the clock. Almost 9 p.m. Too late for anyone to be working, but it didn't matter. I wasn't going to let them pull me back into their expectations anymore. I was done being the safety net. The one who stayed late, who did the work, who cleaned up their messes. The next morning, I sat in my car in the parking lot, staring at my phone. Lexi's name flashed on the screen. I hit accept and pressed it to my ear. "Did you get it?" she asked, her voice lighter than it should have been. "Not yet," I said, the lie slipping out of my mouth without a second thought. "I'll explain later." She didn't push. "Okay, call me when you're ready." We hung up, and I sat there for a moment, the weight of it all sinking in. I had made my decision. There was no going back now. I pulled my laptop out of the passenger seat, opened it, and stared at the screen. The words came quickly. No fluff, no apologies, just the cold facts. Effective immediately, I am resigning from my position as logistics supervisor. My last day will be in 2 weeks. I read it over once more, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. There wasn't anything left to say. I hit send. A part of me expected a burst of relief, but it didn't come. Instead, there was this strange, hollow feeling. I wasn't scared or second-guessing myself. I just knew it was time. Friday afternoon came, and I walked into Tim's office, letter in hand. His back was turned when I knocked, and I could hear him on the phone, chatting with someone in that way that made everything sound like a victory. I cleared my throat. "Tim?" He spun around, the look on his face shifting instantly from casual to surprised. "Everything okay?" he asked, glancing at the letter. I nodded, sliding it across the desk to him. "This is my resignation." He didn't even try to hide the shock, eyes widening. He leaned back in his chair, like he was bracing himself. "You can't be serious." "I am," I said. 2 weeks' notice, like we're supposed to do." He read through the letter quickly and then looked back up at me, the words coming fast. "This is insane, Tasha. You're walking away from everything. The position, the stability, the benefits, all of it. You've put in too much. I cut him off, my voice low but steady. "Maybe, but this time, it's my choice." He stared at me for a moment, blinking like he didn't understand. "This is a huge mistake," he muttered, shaking his head, but the words had lost their punch. I saw the panic creeping into his eyes, a shift I'd never seen before. "I'll wrap things up," I said, straightening my posture, "and I'll make sure the transition is smooth, but I'm done here." Tim didn't answer right away. He opened his mouth to say something else, but he didn't. Just sat there, looking at me, that familiar power dynamic slipping through his fingers. I turned and walked out of his office, the door clicking shut behind me. The finality of it hit me, but it didn't hurt. The weight I'd been carrying for years lifted just a little. I wasn't sure what came next, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like my choice, and that was enough. Monday morning, 6 a.m. My phone rang. I glanced at the screen and saw Eric's name flashing. My heart dropped, and a quick, cynical thought crossed my mind. Here we go. "Hey, Eric," I answered, my voice still rough from sleep. "What's up?" "Hey, Tasha, it's bad," he stammered. "We've got a shipment crisis with Salco Freight. The whole thing's a mess, and I don't know what to do. Can you help?" I didn't respond right away. I wasn't surprised. Eric had been in the job for, barely a few months, and already he was in over his head. The thought didn't sting the way it used to. It was just facts now. "Okay," I said, my voice steady. "Listen to me. First thing, check the inventory logs. Make sure we've got everything they need before you make any calls. Start there." There was a long pause on the other end, and I could hear him shuffling through papers. Okay, got it," he said, sounding relieved. "Now what?" I walked him through the next steps, calmly, step by step. The same way I'd trained him: logistics protocol, client escalation, priority orders. It was second nature to me by now. But this time, it wasn't for him. It was for my own record, my own damn peace of mind. By mid-morning, the crisis was fixed. The shipment had been rerouted, paperwork filed, and Salco was satisfied, at least for now. But when I passed by Eric's desk, he was still sitting there, looking like he'd seen a ghost. He caught my eye and gave me a weak smile. "Thanks, Tasha. I couldn't have done it without you." I didn't return the smile. Instead, I nodded. The words I was thinking staying locked up. "You didn't do it, Eric. I did." The day dragged on, but the moment I could, I started pulling together a master file. Every detail of my job, everything I did, every process, every contingency plan went into it. I made sure it was thorough. I didn't care if they thought it was for Eric or for anyone else. It was for the next person who came into the role, the one who would be handed the same pile of shit I'd been working with for years. They thought they had me. They thought they knew how I worked, that I'd just fade into the background and let them call all the shots. But they didn't know the first thing about me. I was done being the invisible backbone of the operation. Now I was making sure no one could forget exactly how much I'd done. Tim, of course, took credit for the whole thing. By noon, there was an all-staff email saying how Eric handled the Salco freight crisis like a champ. I almost laughed when I read it. I should have been the one getting that pat on the back, but I wasn't surprised. Tim's whole style was to inflate anyone who could help him look good and take credit for everything else. I shut my laptop with a snap and looked out the window, my mind already spinning toward what came next. I wasn't finished yet, not by a long shot. I'd worked too hard to let them erase me, to let them think they could write my story for me. The file grew as the day went on, and I wasn't going to stop until I had everything in place. I met Nathan Cho at a cafe across town. It was quiet, just the sound of the espresso machine humming and the soft murmur of other people's conversations. I shook his hand and took a seat, trying not to let the tension show. This was the moment I'd been working toward. Nathan leaned back in his chair, a relaxed smile on his face. He didn't waste time with small talk. "Tasha, I've read through your resume. 5 years, 4 states, 0 errors. Impressive." I nodded, keeping my response measured. "I've done the work, wherever it was needed." Nathan's eyes were sharp. "That's exactly what we're looking for. We need someone who knows how to handle logistics under pressure. Someone who can keep everything running smoothly, no matter what." I gave him a brief, tight smile. "I know how to make it happen." He didn't hesitate. "I want to offer you the logistics supervisor position. The salary's higher than what you're currently making, and the company culture's a better fit for someone like you. We've got a solid team. You'd have more autonomy, more room to grow." The words hit harder than I expected, but they felt right. A fresh start. It was everything I'd been looking for, without the toxic weight of Tim's shadow hanging over me. I could feel the knot in my stomach loosening as I let myself imagine a future with Eastline, something outside the suffocating box I'd been crammed into. But then Nathan leaned forward, his tone shifting just slightly. "There's one catch." I raised an eyebrow, waiting. "I need you to bring your client contacts with you, the ones you've built up over the years. That's non-negotiable." I considered it for a second, but only for a second. "Done," I said. "They trust me, not the brand." Nathan smiled, like he was expecting that answer. "I figured you'd say that." We talked through the rest of the details, benefits, transition periods, expectations, but my mind was already moving forward. I knew I wasn't just leaving Tim behind. I was leaving his narrow, predictable world behind too. This was something different, something better. Before I stood up to leave, Nathan gave me one last look, a glint of understanding in his eyes. "Tim handed you your leverage, didn't he?" he said, his voice quiet but knowing. I nodded, not bothering to deny it. "He did. And I'm using it." Nathan chuckled lightly. "Good. Don't let him forget it." I walked out of that cafe with a sense of finality that I hadn't felt in years. There was no more second-guessing. No more wondering if I was making the right choice. This was the right choice. It didn't take long for Tim to catch wind of what I was doing. A few days after my meeting with Nathan, I got the call to meet him in his office. I could feel the tension building before I even stepped through the door. He was already sitting behind his desk, looking more tense than usual. He waved an email in my direction as I walked in, his face twisted with frustration. Take a look at this, he said, his voice sharp. A mutual client just forwarded me this email. You've been interviewing behind my back, Tasha? I glanced at the email. It was a standard client update. No big deal, but I could feel his eyes boring into me, waiting for me to say something. I knew exactly what he was accusing me of. Not behind your back, Tim, I said, keeping my voice calm, steady. I'm just exploring options. He scoffed, slamming the email down onto the desk. Exploring? You think I don't know what you're really doing? You're sabotaging this company. You're going behind my back, trying to take clients with you, trying to steal from us. I didn't flinch. I had seen this play before. It was always the same. When you stop playing the game they want you to play, they turn on you. I leaned against the desk, folding my arms. I'm not sabotaging anything, Tim. I'm just looking for something that's more in line with where I want to be. He leaned forward, the anger in his eyes barely controlled. You think Eastline's going to keep you? You're 41, Tasha. You're done here. You're not exactly in a position to be picky. Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was his tone. Maybe it was the casual dismissal of everything I'd done. But I'd had enough of him trying to belittle me. I stood up straighter, walked to the side of his desk, and leaned in. Show me the non-compete I signed, Tim. His face dropped, just for a second. The realization hitting him hard. I wasn't backing down. I wasn't scared anymore. The power he'd held over me for so long, whether it was the job, my daughter, or some warped idea of loyalty, it didn't matter anymore. It was gone. Tim opened his mouth like he was going to argue, but nothing came out. I saw the shift in him. He knew it was over. He could try to pull me back, could try to play his usual cards, but I wasn't falling for it anymore. Without another word, I turned and walked out of his office, the door closing behind me with a quiet thud. My last day came and went with little fanfare. No farewell party, no emotional speeches, just the usual hum of the office. The same people who'd worked with me for years barely acknowledged my presence, offering nods and forced smiles as if they were already relieved I was leaving. I packed up my desk before 9 a.m., stacking up files and clearing out the few personal items I'd accumulated over the years. A couple of photos of Lexi, a small plant I'd kept alive for longer than anyone thought I would, a few pens that still worked. I didn't look back as I filled my bag with the last of it. Before I left, I sent out my transition email, straight to the point. They're in good hands, I wrote. It felt like an understatement, because I knew they weren't. They just didn't realize it yet. As I clicked send, I felt a small, ironic satisfaction. The work I'd done here, the way I'd run the operation all these years, it wouldn't last. They were too caught up in their little power plays to see it. I wasn't worried about them. I was done. I headed for the door. Just as I was about to step outside, a ping came through on my phone. An email from our top client, Salco Freight. My stomach tightened as I read the subject line. Urgent, leadership concerns. I opened it. If Eric's leading, we're out. The words burned into my brain. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, a hollow chuckle rising in my throat. This wasn't about revenge. I didn't need to rub their faces in it. But I'd left them with the truth. I'd done the work, solved the problems, carried the weight of it all, and now, when Eric was left holding the reins, the cracks were already starting to show. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The email was enough. Tim had built his empire on paper. Fake praise, hollow promotions, and forced smiles. But the foundation was brittle, and now someone had lit the match. I turned off my phone, shut the door behind me, and walked out of the building. It was over, but it wasn't my problem anymore. 6 months later, I sat in my corner office at Eastline's new branch HQ. My name was on the door. I could still hardly believe it. I'd been handed a clean slate, 3 new territories to manage, and in that time, I'd doubled our client base. I was building something real here. On my desk, a magazine caught my eye. The headline screamed, Tim's Fall from Grace, Nepotism Scandal Rocks Logistics Firm. Inside, there were details of contract losses, internal investigations, and rumors of Eric going back to school to finish his degree. It was almost too perfect. I let myself smile for a second, then reached for my phone. Lexi had texted me. Dinner tonight, your pick. I texted back. Yes. No laptop between us tonight. Just us. She deserved it. I sat back in my chair, looking out the window. For the first time in years, I wasn't constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. I wasn't stuck in someone else's narrative. I was writing my own. A few weeks ago, I ran into Eric at a coffee shop. He was standing in line, looking a little out of place in his button-up shirt. I could tell he was trying to figure out what to say when I walked up. He cleared his throat. "Tasha," he said, eyes meeting mine. I owe you an apology." I raised an eyebrow but kept my voice even. "For what?" "For everything. The way I acted. I should have never let Tim put me in that position." I studied him for a second. The apology wasn't enough, but it was something. "This time you're learning right," I said, then turned and walked away before he could respond. It wasn't about holding grudges. It wasn't about making him feel bad. It was about letting him know he'd had the chance to learn, and that this time he would. The best payback wasn't rage or chaos. It was building something better, without them.